Good morning, Giants. We are going to tackle a show. My whole screen popped up with all this information all of a sudden. Have you ever wondered how to take charge of your health and your happiness? We've got a great show for you, so hang tight. We'll be right back. Good morning, Giants. Welcome back to another great episode. We are live today with another great guest. But before we jump into that, I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping. If you haven't jumped into our My 12 Journeys community yet, it's my12journeys.com. It's free today. It won't be tomorrow. So we're putting a gateway on it. It'll be $10 a month to be a member of that community. If you join today, it's free. And so those that are watching this in the future, the video, it'll be too late in the future. So today is what day are we even? February 11th? Something like that. February 11th, 2024. So you've got till the end of the day today to jump on that. It's a community full of curated content, exclusive articles. We have AI applications in there for you. And just another community that's designed for change makers. So coaches, consultants, teachers, directors of HR, anybody that's really wanting to elevate their personal development. It's separate from our Tribe of Giants on Facebook. That's a free community. And our Wake Up with Giants TV programs are always free. So you're welcome to join us on Facebook for free. But to be a part of that My 12 Journeys community, you definitely want to jump on it today if you're going to do it for free. Otherwise, you're going to be paying $10 a month to be a part of that. And that's worth every bit of that. I don't have any announcements outside of that, except for Ryan Morris won't be joining us today. He's up in the mountains, enjoying some off time. And so it's just going to be me and Lisa Hammett on this show. So I'm going to introduce our guest here. Today, we welcome Lisa Hammett. She's a dynamic, transformational, and TEDx speaker, international best-selling author, certified positive intelligence PQ coach, and wellness expert. With a 26-year tenure in corporate retail leadership and a personal victory over stress and burnout, Lisa has radically transformed her health and life, losing 65 pounds and finding a new purpose in guiding others to achieve their wellness goals. Her book, From Burnout to Best Life, How to Take Charge of Your Health and Happiness, has soared to bestseller status in 16 categories worldwide, making her a leading voice in work-life balance, productivity, and well-being. So prepare to be inspired as Lisa shares transformative insights and practical strategies for leading a balanced and fulfilling life. Lisa, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here.
Hopefully that was a good intro.
Amazing intro.
Yeah, bring you on right. Well, I love to dive into your journey of what got you to where you are today, because what we feel is when we talk about our 12 journeys, what we talk about is, the inner world of who we thought we were, what we were programmed to be, all the neurobiology that goes into that, how that carries into our perspectives of the world. And we tend to automate that so that it's non-conscious. So we think we are something. And I don't know if you have a point in your life where, or even through development, if you want to explain or share your journey of how you thought you were who you were and how that impacted your life. Is that okay?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Cool.
So I want to share back in 2005, after 26 years in the corporate retail sector, I reached burnout. And I share that because that experience, as traumatic as it was at the time, really propelled me into what I am doing today. So when you talk about what do you think that your journey was, earlier in life, well, I thought it was corporate executive. I didn't really anticipate being in retail as long as I was, but I really pictured myself being an executive. Well, as I started to learn, through years in that business, I developed no work-life balance at all. I was working all the time. And when you're younger, it's not as big of a deal. But as you age and you have a family and you have other priorities, you don't want to be working 24/7. And I started to resent that. And then as I continued to move on, the environment was so toxic that my health started to suffer. And I was married, relatively newly married at the time that I reached burnout. And I'll never forget my husband. He told me, I love you, but I don't like you.
Mm,
You're a nightmare. You're working all the time. You are so stressed out. You're not the person that I married. And we hadn't even been married that long. It was crazy. So I remember waking up one day and just feeling, not even feeling, just looking out at the world, and it looked gray to me. And I'm sure a lot of people are going, well, it's kind of gray outside today.
it is gray. It is February,
It's gray.
right?
But imagine, excuse me, this was September.
Mm,
And, September, it's flourishing. Yes, it's getting into fall, but fall foliage, there's tons of color. And I remember looking and saying, oh my gosh. And it freaked me out because that is a sign of depression.
yeah.
So sorry, I'm losing my voice this
Oh,
morning.
you're good. We can handle it. If you lose
Okay.
your voice, we'll do sign language, and I don't know sign language.
I don't either. So we
Yeah,
can just do all kinds of weird
right?
stuff and it can be
Maybe
kind of
we'll have to type
entertaining.
it out. I'm good with it.
So, yeah. So basically, what happened is in a moment of desperation, and after my husband's, comment to me, I exited that long-term career at a high salary without a strategy of how to replace my income.
So no net.
No net.
Okay.
Don't
Yeah.
do that. I'm here to
I've
tell you that's
I've
not a
done
good
that.
decision.
Yeah, it's a very challenging decision,
Oh my
and
gosh.
brings a lot of uncertainty.
Oh, it was really stressful. I had enough stress in my life, health problems from the work environment, but when you leave a high salary and you don't have a strategy of how to replace that income, that itself can just compound. And
Don't
I
you
ended up
Yeah.
bankrupt.
Okay, so let's hang here for a little bit because
Sure.
that creates you have this depression,
Mhm.
you have this view of the world that's gray, and then you've created a situation where there's now a lot of uncertainty on top of that depression.
Mhm.
So when you're looking at the unknown, you're looking at it not from a place of hope.
No.
You're looking at it from despair. So when people look at uncertainty, this is really important here. How you look at uncertainty matters. Who's showing up to look at that uncertainty matters because you don't see possibility in it.
Right.
And I really want to stay here a little bit with the depression. What happened next? Because you jumped without a net, and here you are just free floating in a
Yep.
depressed state. So you're not really free floating; you're hitting the floor, right?
Exactly. And
Yeah.
I say to people that I slammed into a brick wall at
Ooh.
full speed and it completely knocked me out. And it was not a good place to be. But it was the best place to be for my mental health and wellness.
Mm,
Obviously, it created stress. The financial aspect, terrible. But
yep.
when I left that industry and the constant toxicity and stress, I started my own personal health and wellness development. I had seen a picture of myself in a newspaper. I was networking and had started actually direct selling business and
Mm,
was kind of doing that to get a little bit of income in. And I was horrified at my appearance
mm.
because I had gained so much weight. And I'm like, who is that person? And I was mortified at how I looked. So that was really a wake up call, in addition to I felt terrible. So I went through an extensive wellness journey, actually went through Weight Watchers and I lost the 65 pounds.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then I became a wellness coach. And it was so inspiring and motivating to me watching others who had way more weight to lose. Some of these individuals, over 100, 200 pounds, and they did it without medication and surgery. And it was so inspiring. And I really developed that love for coaching.
Yeah.
So the self development that when you are in that type of space, is not only necessary for the people that you serve, but for yourself. So I just started reading everything that I possibly could on mindset. And then my trainings and certifications in the wellness space, that started to shift my mindset. And
Ooh,
it
yeah.
was so important because when you are so stressed in certain areas, like financially, if you don't have hope and the ability that there is hope for the future, you're going to completely fail.
Yeah, okay, there's so much gold right here. Like, I want to dig this out.
Sure.
A couple of things that you're hitting on. A lot of my creations came from the most stressing times of my life.
Yes.
And what happened is I'm looking for solutions to resolve that stress, that depression, whatever it is. And so I'm out there researching everything I can and learning everything I can about that. Well, the problem with that and the good thing about that is that that starts to seep out of you.
Yes.
So now it starts to express from you. So in our trainings, we talk about the importance of depression and how depression does. There are 5 things, and I'll see if I can remember them. Is it has you resign
Mhm.
from what's happening in your life, has you pull back, right? It
Mhm.
has you really see and reflect on what's happening in your life. So you start ruminating or reflecting. You see reality exactly as it is. So there's like 5 R's in here. Do you see reality? And there's no sugar coating it. It's
No.
reality, not in your delusion, right?
Right.
And then you have a chance to have reverence and respect for that, right? And then finally, you can regenerate or what would you say? Recuperate,
Mhm.
resolve it, bounce back in a new, more powerful way, re-engage in a more
Resilience.
powerful way,
Mhm.
resilience, right?
Mhm.
So the idea here is that depression can actually be a really useful tool. And
Mhm.
when you talk about stress, there's 2 types of stress. There's eustress, EU stress, and distress. And eustress is actually a positive stress and it creates positivity in our world. And distress doesn't. It's the opposite. And so in this situation that you created, because you did create this, it put you in a position of having to learn, how do I navigate out of this? You see
Mhm.
yourself, you see reality, and you're like, ooh, I don't like that. I don't like that reality. So you start learning everything you can. And then that starts to express as your reality. Can you talk about kind of that process? Do you see some connections there?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because that's all part of the mindset
Mm,
shift, really. What you ruminate on, what you think about drives your belief system, which then impacts your behavior. So if you're constantly thinking about the negative, if you're depressed and there's no hope, that's all you're going to see in the world. Hence the gray that I saw. I couldn't even see any sources of light or
mm,
color. So, as you start shifting that mindset through different techniques, it could be reading, I'm a mental fitness expert.
yeah.
Then you start to look at the world differently and you start to see the positive. And it doesn't mean that challenges aren't there. Challenges are always there, they're
Yeah.
never going to go away, but you respond differently to them.
Right.
And, when you're looking at it from a place of hope and positivity, you can look at that challenge and say, "Okay, there is a great learning experience here." Ooh, I like what Ryan said. I felt that.
Yeah.
There's a huge, learning experience here. So let's get curious about this. Let's not be judgmental with ourselves and say, "Oh,
Uh,
I suck at this and this is terrible. My life is awful and blah blah blah." But, let's really look into this and be curious about it. And then we're able to really see the positive and the gift and opportunity in the
yeah.
situation.
Yeah, if we don't get curious, we get judgmental.
Oh,
If
so true.
if we look at the journey of in our journeys, the journey of awareness is all about that gentle and compassionate curiosity.
Yes.
And the programming, whatever the programming it was prior to you awakening, wherever that is, it was based off of societal standards. It was based off this identity that you created because you had an ego and identity that was created that was called corporate structure or corporate,
Yes.
you gave your life to it. And you had an identity around that. And so that was automated and it was running. And then you have this depression, which causes you to pull back from that identity.
Mhm.
And then you can look at it. And when we get stuck in judgment and justification about our identity or our past, then we get stuck in this loop,
Yep.
right? But if we can get curious and compassionate about it, then we have a chance to re-engage in a new direction.
Absolutely.
What does that bring up for you? What other thoughts?
You have to be open to the
Yeah.
possibilities, when things start to go in the other way. And sometimes it can be scary. It can be
Mm,
very scary because as humans, we like to do the path of least resistance. We like to stay comfortable, and change and growth is not comfortable. It
Yeah.
isn't, but that's okay. And again, it's embracing that situation with curiosity and pushing through the fear.
Mm.
It's okay to be fearful. It's okay, but to believe that better is possible.
Yeah.
You can go from this current situation to a much better life. And I call that really your vision statement for the future.
Yeah.
Really, that vision of what your perfect life is like. And you may not exactly know all the steps of how you're going to get there, but you have to believe that it's possible. Because if you
Yeah.
don't have the belief that it's there, it will never manifest,
You know,
ever.
you give somebody a hammer, they think everything's a nail, right? And
So
that's
true.
how I think from the 12 journeys perspective is like, oh my gosh, you're hitting on all these pieces, right?
Yes.
And so, and you really are, you know, the journey of grief is the heavier emotions.
Mhm.
You know, we chose that word grief because it means gravate, it means weightiness, and these heavier emotions. So you can feel these emotions and still believe. You can feel
Mhm.
these emotions and still create. You can feel anger, anxiety, depression, sadness, you name it, grief, and still move toward a powerful life. I mean, we're humans. We're going to experience these chemical responses, right?
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
so when you talk about vision, hope theory suggests that when you have a clear vision, it creates hope in you. And when you have
Mhm.
hope for a brighter future, you start to know that you're the one that's going to create that. And
Yes.
then when you know you're the one that's going to create it, you'll overcome any obstacle to get yourself there.
Mhm.
And so you're talking about the journey of surrender. And so in this world, you don't know how you're going to do it. You just know you're going to do it,
Yes.
right? So
Exactly.
talk to us about this vision and how important is your inner world when it comes to creating that vision?
Well, it's kind of ironic that today is Super Bowl Sunday in the
Mm,
US. And, how do pro athletes, how do NFL players, how do Olympians, how do they win trophies? How do
mm,
they win medals? They have this winner's mindset. They believe beyond a shadow of a doubt that they will win. They will catch that play. They will, do that perfect stroke that will get them that record time, whatever it is. But it's again, it's visualizing it to the point of that you can see details and you
mm.
attach emotion to it. Because if there's not an emotion into it, there's no investment. I mean, you could say, oh, this is what I want in my life. I want this kind of house. I want this kind of car. This is what success means to me, all that kind of thing. And it's just stuff. It's just stuff. But when you tie it to the emotion of how are you going to feel? What is that emotion going to be tied to? What are the quality of your relationships going to be? What are you going to be doing? Who will you be surrounded with? I mean, really investing in that feeling. And
Mm.
then once you just feed into that and keep visualizing it and thinking about that consistently, then the action steps will start to follow. The goals you can create, I like to call them smarter goals instead of smart goals, but the
Yeah.
smarter goals, that you can put into place, and then the actions are going to follow suit. And then, as you had said earlier, when those challenges arise, you can push through them. You don't allow the fear and those negative emotions, which will still appear, you don't allow them to derail you.
Yeah.
And, as a mental fitness expert, I have techniques that I help myself and others, prevent yourselves from allowing those emotions to derail you, because you're not
Yeah.
going to be cured.
Yeah.
But
No, yeah.
no, you
That's a
never will be.
that's a misnomer anyway, right? The word
Yeah.
whole or healing, the word to heal means wholeness. And as a human, as a holistic human, I mean, we're already complete. And part of that is feeling these heavier emotions. That's part of the
Mhm.
journey. We're holistic.
Yes.
Um, but I have a contrasting view here because you talk about the visualization and you
Mhm.
need to feel the emotion. And I'm one of those skeptical guys. It's like, well, I can't see it. I don't believe it. Biblically, there was the dad that was like, well, I believe, but I don't believe. Like
Mhm.
help where I don't believe. If we look at the word belief, that's from the Germanic Glauben, it means to hold dear, right? And it's these value systems or experiences that we've held on to that impact our ability to see the future.
Mhm.
And so as we hold these dear and then we look at what's possible, a lot of times we don't have the belief system
Mhm.
to be able to do that. And so I'm going to rant for just a second here and then
Sure.
we'll come back. The idea of holding on to this belief system and then looking at a future that we haven't created yet. And I love the idea. Townsend Wardlaw once said that every belief is limiting by the nature of believing it. We just boxed in the universe and said that's it, right? So by nature, we're limiting in our belief systems. We can only see what we can see, right?
Mhm.
I'm going to pull that back up. I shut it off too quickly there. But so in the case of somebody who has grander visions for themselves, yet their limiting beliefs get in the way of it. And I've experienced where you can have these outcomes regardless of those limiting beliefs if you'll just continue to automate and step,
Mhm.
even if those are playing out and even if the emotions are going. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Everybody has limiting beliefs. Even
Mm,
so, one of my biggest role models who I absolutely adore is Brene Brown.
mm,
Absolutely love her. I think she's
yeah.
fantastic. And when she speaks, she often talks about her limiting beliefs. She is far from perfect. She judges herself. She's described
Yeah.
situations where
Which is awesome because she's out there teaching vulnerability,
she
right?
is, and
Yeah.
she is vulnerable as
Mm,
regards. But the thing is that she learns how to manage those situations, and that is the key, because limiting beliefs are just lies that we tell ourselves. They
mm,
really are. It's manufactured garbage that we tell ourselves. We
mm.
are not born with limiting beliefs. They develop as we age by our influencers, by the biases that we create,
Yeah.
in our journey. We are not born with those limiting beliefs. So
They're
we
programmed.
they are programmed, and we
Yeah.
need to learn to recognize them. Now, why they can be challenging is because obviously they're negative emotions, negative thought patterns. And the majority of the thought patterns that we have, in fact, almost 80% of our thoughts are negative,
Yeah.
which is a scary statistic. So then it makes you think, well, how do I get out of bed in the morning? Some
Yeah.
mornings. I mean,
Yeah.
that's terrible. So how do you stop that? Well, it kind of goes back to that awareness that you were saying before. You have to be aware that they're there,
Okay, I've
and
got
you
I've
have
got
to
one more
recognize
addition.
them.
Hang
Yes.
hang on to that. Like what
Yes. Okay.
just to plug in. Um, that only 5% of our thoughts are original. That we
Mhm.
keep recycling the same thoughts, and if
Isn't that
80% are
crazy?
negative, yeah, go ahead and continue, but I wanted to throw that in there.
Well, then that just validates the fact that, we have all this mind trash that we tell ourselves, and we have to create the awareness that it's there, so that
Mm,
when we feel it and see that emotion, then we have different techniques that we use to diffuse it, so it does not become this paralyzing, defeatist mentality that prevents us from taking positive action.
mm.
Because you're going to have good days and bad days. Everything could be going great. And there could be really no apparent reason why you feel a certain way,
Yeah,
but it could happen. And then there's other days where obviously something terrible might happen. But again, it's learning to look at it from a different lens. Yes,
yeah.
tons of mind trash.
And you
And it's
might
a
wake
matter of
up in it, right? You just
yes,
might wake up and you're anxious and you're like, "I have
yes,
no idea where this is even coming from." I
yes,
have that. Or you're depressed and it's like, "Where did that even come from?"
yes,
And then you start the thinking.
yes.
Um, the beauty of this is it normalizes things. It's okay to not be okay. We're all humans. We're
Mhm,
holistic. We're going to go through a range of thoughts, emotions. The beauty of the human brain is its ability to automate things. Alfred North Whitehead talks about it. He says that, the more we can automate, the more we can do. And it's by that automation that we're able to do what we can do. Right.
mhm,
And most of what we do is automated. But if we could slow down with it from a space of curiosity, going back to what you shared earlier, well, that allows you to shift the direction of your automations
mhm.
because now you can start plugging in new information that allows you to have different thoughts. And when you have different thoughts,
Yes.
you're going to have different belief systems. And when you have different belief systems, you're going to have different visions, right?
1,000%. 1,000%.
Huh.
Yes.
So,
It's changing changing those neural pathways from
Yeah.
that old programming of all that mind trash that we're acclimated to creating those neural pathways in the mindset that it is possible.
Yeah.
This
Wow.
can happen. And
Mm.
that all ties into your vision.
Yeah. So I saw a video this morning. I really love the idea. This is throw us off course a little bit, but the idea that time is always present. So we are always present. Time flows through us. We don't flow through time. So everything is an expression from us, not the other way around. It's like when we create a vision and time flows through us, and that vision is what's within us, then as that nutrient of time comes through us, what expresses in our reality is whatever's going on in here. And that's the exciting news and the scary news.
Mhm.
Because really all of the control comes back to what's going on in here that's expressing as your reality, because how you think of the world, how you feel about the world, how you act in the world is what's going to create your world. It's going to be an expression, just like a
Mhm.
seed would be, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So it comes back to this inner work, right?
Mhm.
Well, and you could say, no, Nick, not right. That, like, I disagree, and that would be okay too. But do you have a contrasting view of that, or some facet that we could go off of when it comes to that expression of your visions?
It's a great question.
Mm.
I'm thinking.
Yeah, I like
There's so many
I like
avenues that
it.
I could go with this.
I like it because now we're in a very curious state
It
here.
is. There's just so many directions. So I'm going to go on this direction
Yeah.
because we were talking about curiosity.
Okay.
So let me tell you, visions can change.
Mm.
Okay. There is this mentality often that once you have this vision, you're locked into this vision, and that's all there is to it. Well, the concept of the vision could still be there, but the
Mm.
steps and maybe some of the components of it could change because your life changes and you evolve and you grow. And things that maybe when you had this vision years ago, maybe you realize they're not quite as important. Although the whole scheme of things, in the big picture might be the same, but some of the people that you were with or some of the things that you had thought might be more important at a particular time are then
They're changed.
shifting. They're
Yeah.
changing.
Yeah.
So it's part of the evolution process. And again, just kind of the ease and flow. And one thing that I want to mention is it kind of tying into those negative thought patterns is whenever we are doing something that seems hard,
Yeah.
that means that we are being hijacked by a negative emotion. And
Mm.
in the positive intelligence space, we call those saboteurs. And we then often allow those all consuming emotions to hijack us and impact our behavior. The thing is with these emotions, they can be quieted,
Mhm.
and it doesn't mean that you have to stay in them indefinitely. They can alert you that something is wrong, and then you can shift to
Yeah.
a different mindset.
Something to pay attention to, right?
Yes.
I just
Yes.
had a couple of quick thoughts, as you're saying that. The distinction between revolution and evolution is like evolution would be the revolution without the resistance, right?
Okay.
Like to
Yes.
change, like, I don't, just a thought. It's random and maybe it doesn't make any sense, right?
It
But
does to you.
But it does to me, but we resist change even when it's positive for us. So when we
Yes.
evolve, we actually can create that transition or that transformation without the resistance, right? Most
Mhm.
people are resistant to change, even the positive change. The
Mhm.
other is that learning to navigate your emotions. I saw a really cool technique the other day where you put your finger in your ear and you pull down and you
Mhm.
breathe through it because it stimulates the vagus nerve, which helps calm the emotion. So you can
Yep.
actually stick your finger in your ear. It's almost like telling the world to be quiet a little bit,
Mhm.
but it's when you learn techniques and tools to really build a tolerance to the emotions so that you can survive those emotions, so that you can continue moving forward without those pulling you backward and
Mhm.
creating more damage in your world. Then that's how you anchor in. It's like a rock climber has anchors for a
Mhm.
reason, so that they only fall so far. And when you
Yep.
have these tools and techniques, when you get into those emotional states, you're only going to fall so far, and you're not going to go all the way back and have to clean up or make up ground. Right. And I think that's where
Exactly.
many of us get stuck is we get down in our emotions, and then we backslide, and then we're closing the gap just to get to where we were. And then we got to build on top of that. So it's exhausting.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It
So
is.
tools like this anchor us in. Can you speak to that? The importance of that, the tools.
Yes. Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
if I can share a story
Hmm.
of this, what I'm going to share. So, mental fitness is, how I help people manage those negative thought patterns. And when we're mentally fit, basically what that means is we're able to respond to life's challenges with a positive versus a negative mindset.
Okay.
So, we're able to recognize those negative emotions, understand them as that they're not truths, intercept them, and shift to a positive mindset. And we do this with a series of micro meditations. And when you were saying about, putting your finger in your ear or what have
Yeah.
you, that
Yeah.
in essence is kind of a micro meditation. So the way that I choose to share it is engage your senses. And it could
Mm.
look something like this. So for our audience and for you as well, is zero in on something in your immediate surroundings that you can
Okay.
see
Yeah.
and just really stare at it so intently that you're seeing colors, shapes, textures. It could be a reflection in the surface, but really staring at it as if you've never seen it before
Mm. Yeah.
and just intentionally look at it. And so you can do sight, you could do touch, which could be as simple as rubbing two fingertips together and really feeling the fingertip ridges of your fingers. Or
Yeah.
maybe there's an object that, you like the feeling of that object. So you feel that. It can also be something that you can hear.
Mm.
And it could be the most distant sound you could hear, like a passing car, conversation in another room, or it could be the sound of your breath, because the breath is very powerful.
Mm.
So, what all these little micro meditations do is they quiet those negative saboteur traits and they help us shift to that positive mindset. So, I have a strong testimony as to why these work. So as you had mentioned in my intro, I had a TED Talk, and I
Yes.
did that,
Yep.
over a year ago. And if anybody has done a TED Talk, I'm sure you can understand there's a lot of preparation, can be a little nerve wracking. Well, I went into it with an incredible headspace, and I just felt awesome, and went into the venue, and I felt really good, and they took me back into the green room and mic'd me up, and I was feeling energized. I felt little butterflies, but not terrible. And I was doing a lot of this, and I was doing breathing exercises, and I felt great. So when they called me up on stage, I looked out at the audience. I'm like, I've got this. This is going to be amazing. So I started, and I felt really great. And then I hear this voice saying, Lisa, Lisa. And I'm like, what? And at first I thought I was hearing something. And then I stopped. It was the MC who interrupted me mid sentence. This was not even 10 seconds in to my TED Talk. And she rushes over to me. I'm in the middle of the stage, and she says, your microphone's not on.
Oh.
So when they had put my microphone on and they tested it, they inadvertently turned it off. So I'm looking out at the audience, and they're looking at me like, what the heck is going on? I mean, this never happens, especially during a TED Talk.
Yeah.
So she has her arm up the back of my jacket and my shirt because they had wired me, backwards. So she's up there, and I'm just looking at the audience, and I was in such a great headspace that I'm just like, okay, it is what it is. And then she got it to turn on, and then she just said quietly, would you please start over? Had I not been in that good headspace and been doing these mental fitness exercises, I could have completely derailed.
Yeah.
And I started without a hitch. And in fact, my closing remarks, I referred to the instance about, life can be predictable, things can happen like a sound system, and I actually walked the audience through mental fitness techniques.
Yeah.
So it's ironic that my topic went perfectly with what occurred. And out of 19 people, because there were 19 of us, I was the only one who had a microphone incident.
Huh.
So
Interesting.
I
Yeah.
was able to
Interesting.
share how things like this can help. So,
Perfect timing,
it was
right?
perfect timing. So these
Yeah.
little tools and techniques, like you had alluded to, can really make a huge difference.
Yeah, I'm going to share a tool today because I want
Yes.
to talk about that. What you're doing is cognitive restructuring or cognitive reframing, and you can't do that when you're in a heightened emotional state.
Right.
So you've got to calm the emotions. There's a book called Calming the Emotional Storm. It talks about dialectical behavioral therapy and DBT skills, and they're only intended to survive the emotion, right? Calm the storm. And then once you get the storm calmed, then you can work to restructure if there's some
Mhm.
restructuring in your thinking that needs to be done. I created a tool on comparison, and it's an AI application, and it talks to you voice to voice like this, like you and I are talking.
Mhm.
And it helps you to navigate the comparisons and judgments that you have about yourself in relation to others, in relation to your own value systems. And sometimes even when you put yourself above others, you can go through this tool and navigate where you think you're better than other people. And that
Mm.
comparison, right? The opposite comparison, not the negative comparison. So the tool actually helps you to have a conversation and restructure in a safe and somewhat humorous way. I'm going to post that in the comments here, because it's designed, when you can really slow down with your thoughts, then you can restructure them. But if you're stuck in the emotions,
Mhm.
then your only responsibility, and maybe you can help me with this, is uh, to have that mental fitness, like you described, to have those tools to survive those emotions.
Mhm.
Can you add to that? Is there something you would add to comparison, judgment, and those tools?
Well, you're absolutely right, and I use this analogy a lot when I'm speaking to audiences, that you do have to quiet the emotion because the emotion will pass.
Mm,
And imagine that there's a dry erase board, a white dry erase board in the front of you. And on that dry erase board, there's all these, black scribbles on
mm.
it. Okay. In fact, there's more black scribbles on it than white surface.
Yeah.
And as you're doing these mental fitness techniques or whatever tools that you're using to
Yeah.
help just dissipate those negative feelings,
Yeah.
imagine that you're taking an eraser and you're wiping off those black scribbles, so that with each meditation that you do or technique that you do, you are clearing that board. And by the end, when you have a whiteboard in front of you, that is when you have quieted that negative
Mm.
emotion so that you can then look at things very differently.
Yeah. Because that's where, and then the more you repeat that different thinking, the
Mhm.
more your brain comes in to support it.
Yes.
You okay if I nerd out a little bit here on the
Please.
neurobiology? Like
Yes. I love
when you
science.
create, we'll dive into it. The neurobiology is that when you create a new neural pathway, anytime you think about creating a new neural pathway, a neural pathway is started.
Mhm.
But what completes it is the completion of that activity. So when you complete it, then it creates a connection between one neuron and another. And then as you repeat it, the glial cells come in and support that. So they make it more efficient. So you have oligodendrocytes, astrocytes, and microglia that make it fire faster and faster and more efficiently. And then the more you do that, the stronger those connections become until it becomes automated. It becomes your
Mhm.
character, right? And
Yep.
then your character becomes your reality. And so I think too many of us give up way too early on these new thought patterns so
Mhm.
that they don't become automated and they don't become part of our character essence. And
Right.
then they therefore don't become part of our reality because we never gave them the attention they needed to grow, like a
So
garden.
true.
Yeah. Can you speak to that a little bit?
So true. I mean, it's really what you're speaking to is basic habit formation.
Yeah. Yep.
It really is.
Truly.
And I love James Clear,
Mm,
Atomic Habits.
yes.
And for those who love to read here, and if you haven't picked up his book, read it. It's phenomenal. But he talks a lot about habit formation. And
Mm,
what is very important is the way we form a habit is it's through repetition, as you had
yeah.
said. That's the only way that you will develop that strong neural pathway that becomes habitual. And oftentimes we do quit because we think it's too hard, because we try to form habits that are too hard. And when I say hard, it doesn't mean that we can't do them. It's not like it's rocket science. But
Yeah.
when you have not formed that neural pathway and you haven't formed that behavior, you have to start realistically, super realistically slow in tiny, tiny
Yes. Yeah.
steps. And
I
I
love that.
call it like stupid slow
Yeah. Yeah.
to the point of that you're thinking, well, that's ridiculous. Really? I would do
Oh, this
that.
is beautiful.
But
Yep.
but I tell people this all the time, like I have an accountability group, and in that accountability group we talk about action items, and somebody might say to me they want to improve their health and well-being, and they're like, okay, so I want to drink more water, for
Yeah.
example. And I haven't been drinking really hardly any water, but I know it's good and I need to start doing it. So I'm going to start drinking 60 ounces of water a day. And I'm like, you don't have, and I'm saying this to myself, I would never
Yeah.
say this to the person, but it's like, you don't have a snowball's chance in hell of doing that. You have
Right.
not been doing that. So how can you go from 0 to 60 ounces a day? So I push back, challenge them, and just say, okay, so you haven't been doing this. So do you really feel that it is realistic that you can go from drinking no water to 60 ounces, especially every
And
single day,
sustain it,
and
right?
sustain it? And they're like, well,
Right.
probably not. So maybe I'll do 3. I'm like, okay, you want to try for 3, but I'm still going to do some pushing back, because have you ever drank 60 ounces of water? That's a lot of water, and
It's
it
a lot.
can be done. But if
Yeah.
you haven't trained your body to drink water, it's going to be a struggle.
Yeah.
Okay, well, maybe, how about, here's a bottle here. Could you drink a bottle? Oh, I could definitely drink a bottle. Okay, well, why don't we start with 1 bottle? And if you want to do it 3 days a week, that's fine. But again, is you have to start almost ridiculously slow, and then you can
Mm.
always build on it, because that's how habits are formed.
Yeah.
It's
Uh,
it's it's a
Ben
process.
Benoit Mandelbrot talks about he's the one that created the fractal equation, and
Mhm,
he has a super simple equation that when the outcome is added back into the equation, it creates another outcome, and it's a
mhm,
bigger outcome. But it's a small step repeated, and his position is that that creates the complexity of life. Small steps repeated create the
mhm,
complexity of life. And he
mhm,
creates these intricate, what they called monsters. They were so big, these equations, that they couldn't use them on the computing systems that they used to have back in the 50s and 60s. And so when computers came out, they finally got the Mandelbrot set and the fractals, and they're incredible. They're self-similar patterns repeated. They create complexity. And we say in our training, giants still take small steps. They're just bigger. They're just
mhm.
they're just giants. You know what? Their small step is just something that is giant to you, but it's still a small step. And so the idea, going back to, you said, is that realistic? Everything's realistic if we're honest about it. Everything's possible,
Right.
but is it sustainable? Is it something that you
Yes.
could do over and over again for the next 10 years, 15 years? I was having this conversation this morning. Is like, these people set these goals. We were talking about intermittent fasting. It's like, I don't want to intermittent fast for the rest of my life to
Mhm.
sustain it. Like, I could do it once in a while, but for me, I don't want to take that on as a sustainable thing. So I might fast on
Exactly.
occasion, but it goes back to like what you said, drink this amount of water. Right.
Exactly, and, the key in habit formation too,
Yeah.
so there's 3 components of it. So there's the cue, or the reminder for you to
Okay.
do the behavior, and then there's the behavior, and then there's the reward that
Hmm.
makes you want to continue with that behavior. So in the case of water, let's say the individual wants to drink a bottle of water first thing in the morning. So they'll put the bottle of water next to their coffee pot, because the first thing they do when they get up is they go reach for a cup of coffee. So they see the cup of coffee, the trigger to, or they see the coffee pot and the bottle of water sitting next to it. So
Yeah.
the reminder to drink the water is the water bottle's there.
Yeah. I
So that's
like
their
that.
trigger. They're going to drink it, and their reward is their cup of coffee. So they can't have their cup of coffee until they drink the bottle of
Ooh, I
water.
like that.
So there has to be, some kind of reward or motivating component
I like that.
involved.
So the
Yeah.
extinction would be a similar process, just in reverse. So instead of, like, if
Mhm.
you're trying to quit soda, well, don't buy soda at the store, right?
Right.
Because if you have it in your house, you're gonna drink it,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
So then with practice, it would become automated that you would stop that behavior, at least slow it down.
Mhm.
I want to hit on this. Hugh asked, what's the difference between emotions and feelings? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. And then I've got some thoughts there as
Ooh.
well.
So emotions are something that's triggered. I
Mm,
mean, it's something that can dissipate. Well, feelings can dissipate too, but emotions are something that can just be triggered very quickly and can also dissipate really quickly.
mm.
And it can be positive or it can be negative, but it's really kind of a reaction to something else. Now, feelings, you could feel a certain way, but feelings, in my humble opinion, are
Yeah.
those things that are kind of develop and are tied to almost like those biases that we develop throughout the years. It's really how we feel about certain things. It's our belief
Yeah.
system. It's tied to really our belief system and
Yeah.
how we feel. And certain actions and emotions can make us feel a certain way.
Yeah. I have a different view on that.
Oh, okay, well, please, I love
Yeah,
that.
but I don't think it's that far off. Like
Okay.
in accelerated resolution therapy, they talk about sensations. They focus on sensations
Mhm.
more than emotions. And
Okay.
emotions tend to be these, diagnosed, labeled meanings of what we've given those sensations. Like this
Mhm.
set of sensations means this. So we call that an emotion. It's the thing that gets us to move, right?
Yes.
So then our brain's interpreting, that emotion. But the feelings to me would be more along the lines of the sensations. Like these are the things that come up in your body in response to some impact of or event in your world. So these
Okay.
sensations. So what I like about accelerated resolution therapy is that they focus on sensations, not emotions, because we might mislabel our sensations. We
Mhm.
might think we've got anxiety when really it's depression or
Yes,
anger or right. So to
absolutely.
focus on the sensations or the feelings is to pay attention to what's going on in your body and then notice that the emotion is what your brain's trying to make sense of that gets you to move on that sensation.
Yes.
Does that add anything to what you were sharing?
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense, and it goes into really being present
Yeah.
so that you can really discern the differential between it.
Yeah.
Why am I having these feelings?
Mm.
Why are these coming up? Be curious about it because our first reaction, especially if they're negative, is to start judging ourselves and being
Oh man.
critical. And then that just takes us down a whole other ugly path. And then it just implodes and manifests into something else that we could just nip in the bud. But if we're looking at it really with curiosity and thinking, oh, why am I feeling this way? And
Yeah,
kind
I
of
like that.
almost reverse engineering it. It's like, okay, so what occurred? How is it feeling in my body? I love that too. And that's all a part of really being present. Where am I feeling this in my body?
Yeah.
Is this emotion? Am I feeling a tension in my stomach? Am I having a tension headache? Is my body feel heavy? Does it feel
Yeah.
light? So it's
Is there
really being present.
pain, right?
Yes. Is there
Yeah.
pain? Absolutely.
I like that
Absolutely.
because a lot of times these you look at trauma responses, they're stored
Yes.
everywhere through the
Oh,
whole body.
absolutely.
And so sometimes you don't have language for it. So
Mhm.
you wouldn't be able to
True.
say, "Oh, I'm feeling this here in my body," but you can describe the sensation. "Oh, I'm feeling a pressure in my lower back,"
Yes.
you know? And then I'm also feeling butterflies in my stomach. My heart's beating faster, right? So that lends an understanding without languaging. Because I
Mhm.
think what we try to do is we try to label things
Mhm.
and then we try to operate from those labels, and our labels might be off,
So true. So
right?
true.
So, man, it just what I hear and what you're sharing is it just lends to the humanness in all of us that
Mhm.
holistically we're going to have programming that either we inherited or we
Mhm.
developed over time.
Mhm.
Prior to the age of 7, it was purely inherited, and then socially, we start adding to it from 7 to 13, and from 13 to 25, we really identify ourselves, and then we find out, like you did, oh, that's not me, and then we
No.
quit our jobs without a net, and then we're back to figuring stuff out, right?
Don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah.
But it gives to the humanness of we all have some sort of experience like this where
Mhm.
we battle our programming. That's
Mhm.
really all we're doing.
Yeah.
And then our emotions get in the way because they muddy our ability to think through our programming so that we can restructure it.
Mhm.
And if we can have mental fitness like what you're describing here, having these
Yes.
tools in our pocket, we're able to calm those emotions so that we can restructure and re-engage. And I really appreciate you saying small steps when you're starting something new, because
Mhm.
that is so vital. If
Mhm.
you've never done 60 ounces of water, then come back to 8 ounces of water or 4 ounces of water.
Or
Let's
4
start
ounces.
there,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to build on it. And again, it goes back to what I had said earlier is that can we drink 60 ounces of water? Sure, we can.
Yeah.
Anybody could do that if they really put their mind to it. But if you haven't formed that neural pathway, if you haven't developed that habit, it's not
Yeah.
going to happen. It will not happen. And then you're going to set yourself up for failure. And all that negative mind trash is just going to exacerbate and just completely cause, all these other issues. And yeah,
Yeah. And
it's going to set you up for failure.
it's not bad to fail. It's your judgment of the failure that keeps you from
Yeah.
growing, right?
And
Like,
yes, and I hear what you're saying. I don't like the term failure. This is just me personally,
yeah, yeah,
because I think it's so negative. It's just steeped in negativity, and this is just my mindset.
sure,
I
yeah,
know a lot of other people don't agree with this, but failure to me is okay. There was a learning opportunity here.
yeah,
So, to what some person might say, well, I completely had this epic fail on this.
yeah,
No, this was a learning opportunity. This is something that is teaching me either maybe this isn't the right path that I should have taken, or maybe this isn't even something that I should be doing at all.
yeah.
But it's a learning, and it's a
It's lear
slight mindset
absolutely.
shift. It's a mindset shift.
The definitions of the word success and failure, right?
Mhm.
Etymologically, the word success means a positive yield from your efforts, and
Mhm.
negative means a negative yield from your efforts.
Mhm.
But the yield is subjective. So what we determine to be successful and failure is subjective, right? So we measure what we thought should happen and we judge it as positive yield or negative yield from our efforts. And like you say, it's a learning opportunity, and the creation is all created. It's all
Mhm.
made up, right? So
Right.
one person's success might be another person's failure.
Mhm.
And so here we go around judging ourselves around all this stuff that's just made up. And somewhere along the line, socially and collectively, we've agreed that this is what success looks like. And then we don't measure up to that. And then we think we're failures,
Oh
but
gosh,
we're,
you could, yeah.
yeah.
I could
What
go
did
on
that
and
bring
on
up?
about this topic
Yeah. Yeah.
because excuse me. Oh, comparing yourself to others
Mm.
will set you up for failure. I don't like that word, but
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
going to set you up for failure. You will never be
Mm.
happy, successful, whatever you want in life, it's not going to happen because it will sabotage your way of thinking.
Yeah.
And the thing that's the irony in this really is those people that appear to be successful to
Mm.
us, in their minds, they're probably thinking, well, I could be doing better. I'm not successful. And they
Yeah.
could
Yep.
actually be looking at you and thinking that you are successful. So I always share this with people when they really are getting down on themselves and they have confidence issues and they're just in a really bad place. It's like, have you ever thought that what you have in your life and the skills that you have, that there are other people in this world that wish they had what you had?
Yeah. Yeah.
And someone told that to me, shared that at, with me, gosh, years ago. And it really spoke to me because it really takes a different perspective, that we tend to get so fixated on those lies and those negative things, and we just spiral and spiral, and we don't look at the solution,
Yeah.
and we let ourselves get hung up often on things that we have no control over. That's the thing that's so ridiculous about it, is we just fixate on it instead of, looking at it as like, wow, you know what? This is such a great learning, that this isn't really the route that I should be going anyways, because this isn't in my zone of genius. I am
Yeah.
making comparison, And so when we compare ourselves to others, those people that appear to be totally successful, they're comparing themselves to others too.
Yeah,
It is what it is.
there's a lot of research around that. Lisa Feldman Barrett's work on emotions and especially depression and anxiety. She says that we feel depressed when we're not measuring up to our own ideals, self
Mhm.
comparison, and we feel anxious when we feel like we're not measuring up to the ideals we think others have for us.
Mm.
And so there's a ton of research to support that that's what we do is we compare
Mhm.
ourselves and then we feel anxious or depressed.
Yeah.
And so going into the idea of comparison, that's one reason I created this tool is for my own comparison. I find
Mhm.
myself sitting there comparing myself to others and my own value systems and
Mhm.
finding myself wanting. And so that tool allows you to just navigate it. And for those that are looking at that, they'll see it in the comments there. It doesn't include the GPT subscription, so that's separate. Just on that. But with that tool, what it does is it helps you, like what you just talked about, to really look at objectively your comparisons gently and compassionately in a languaging that's a little bit humorous, but allows you to see this is kind of comedic in a way, the way I'm talking
Mhm.
about myself. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Lisa, you're phenomenal. I appreciate you doing this. I want to ask you,
Thank
if there was a question that you wish somebody would ask you in a podcast that they haven't asked you, that you're like, man, I wish somebody would ask me this. What would that be?
I How do I feel about myself?
Okay.
Maybe they're wondering, since we're
Yeah.
having this conversation, how do I
Yeah.
feel about myself? I'm gonna say there are good days and there are bad days just like anybody else,
I
but
like that.
fortunately, I have the tools that when I catch myself going down that comparison cycle, because I'll admit, there are days where I'm like, "Oh, he's way more successful than me," or, "Wow, he's getting into something that, oh, I really should be." We could shit ourselves to death.
Yeah.
Stop
Yeah.
shitting on yourself.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. So, what's it like being Lisa?
Mm.
What's it like being me? I would say I am a happy, positive person mostly. There are days, just like all of us, that
Yeah.
can be challenging, but
Yeah.
when I catch myself doing that, I try to focus on something outside of myself.
Yeah.
And I am a firm believer of finding joy in the small things in life.
Mm.
And it's not having a new car or going on this amazing vacation. I'm not saying don't do those things, they're great, but really savoring that cup of coffee or that hot cup of tea, or if you're going for a walk, really just looking at the nature around you and just really
Yeah.
being present and mindful. And I've really focused on finding the joys in those little things, often that we take for granted. And
Yeah.
that's the best way that if you have a negative thought that's starting to arise, you can just flip it and just think about, wow, look at
Yeah.
that beautiful sunset or sunrise, or you know I don't know, you smell something that smells amazing. It's like, "Oh, that smells so good." Just
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah. But there
So,
there are these misconceptions that,
mhm.
as coaches and facilitators and speakers that we've got it all figured out,
No,
right?
no, no.
And we're sitting here using our own tools to navigate just like you are on the other side of the
Yeah,
screen. This life, I mean, I have crazy negative thoughts come up, crazy negative
oh, yeah.
emotions come up every day. Like they're constantly there, but the tools help me to navigate them so that they're not
Yes,
as impactful, right?
yes,
And
absolutely.
that sounds like you as well.
Yes. Oh,
Well,
nice to meet you too, Lori.
we've got people from all over the world joining us. It's kind of cool to see from the Philippines, Lori's in Canada,
I love
Yuma,
it.
Arizona, Hugh. Just really, really great following here. Uh, Learning an anxiety to reframe it as excitement. Yeah, same chemical response there. It can
Yes,
be, right? And
that's a
be
good
honest about it. If you're feeling anxiety, be honest about, yeah, I'm feeling anxiety. It's okay. It's okay to feel
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Lisa,
validate it. Yeah.
yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say validate that emotion and then, get curious. Okay, what is really causing
Mm,
the anxiety? I have the best plan for life for me. that's amazing.
Yeah.
It's
What would you
amazing.
say? So, final thought here as
Sure.
we wrap up, to the person on the other side of the screen, because there are real people here watching, and will
Mhm.
be others that watch after. But if you could share one message or, just a thought with them, what would you want to share?
I wrote a social post this morning. Actually, I haven't submitted it because I wanted to be here, obviously, but
Yeah.
it's really about self love. And it's not a term, that's original per se, but it ties in so beautifully to everything that we have talked about today, and how we can be so hard on ourselves and hold ourselves to this different expectation and compare ourselves to others, and we should be doing this, we should be doing that. No, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, in this season of love, because Valentine's Day is next week, but
Yeah.
really every single day, what are you doing daily to love yourself? And I'm not talking about being narcissistic and
Mm,
saying, oh, I'm the end all be all, but what is it that you are doing? And it can be small, to love on yourself, because when you love yourself, imperfections at all, this does not mean that you love yourself and think that you're perfect, because you're not. But when you do love yourself as you are happier, you're healthier, and it's easier to create that
mm.
vision for your future.
I like that. As you said that, do something to love yourself. I have a watch that doesn't work anymore. And I'm like, I'll never wear this watch again. And then we did a show with somebody and they talked about setting the time to a certain time. So I thought that was pretty cool. So I set my watch to 528, which is the frequency of love. So when I wear that watch, it's a dead
Cool.
watch at 528.
Okay.
That reminds me that when I wear that, to come from love. It's love time,
I love
right?
that.
So just a gentle, like one way, just an
Yes.
out of the box way of reminding yourself, like you said, setting the cue, the
Yes.
trigger in the
Yes.
environment. And so that's a great message, is love yourself in some small way
Mhm.
today. I think that's
Yep.
cool. Well, for everybody that's watching, thank you for being a part of this. Make sure you go and check out Lisa at lisahammett.com, and feel free to reach out to her about her programs and her coachings and trainings. Watch her TEDx talk. It's a powerful talk, and connect with her. Go follow her. Go join her community. And as always, if you haven't done the my12journeys.com community, it's free today, but not tomorrow. So you want to go jump on that today. You will have to answer some questions and check your spam folder, because somewhere along the lines it could get lost in there, and you want to check and make sure that you get logged in, because we will honor our agreement around that. Even if we can't get you in today, we'll get you in. For everybody that's watching, we appreciate you. Thank you for being a part of our community. We always say you're exactly where you're supposed to be. You're right on time. You're doing what you need to be doing. Trust that. And as much as possible, take these small steps to change and transition into what you'd like to be, because it's going to express from you. And if you know somebody that would benefit from Lisa's message today, share this link with her. Go to YouTube and grab the YouTube link and share it with them and say, you got to watch this. And make sure that they know why. Tell them why they should watch it. So we appreciate you. Thanks for being a part of this community and for everything you do for us. And we will see you in the next episode. Go make it a giant day.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.